episode 20 of Countdown to Restoration. Your host, Danny Thompson, here to count down the illegitimate days of the illegitimate and greatly befuddled Biden regime, as we will see today. Very special program going over last night's town hall meeting in which the thief in chief, where is he? The thief in chief, the thief in chief made it known to the world this is someone who should not be in any office at any time. At least my opinion, yours may vary after we get into the program. But nevertheless, we move on. Of course, the poster child for the Biden regime, Dr. Rachel Levine, Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, who obviously failed health class when they were explaining the different sexes of male and female. And this just shows how befuddled the Biden regime really is as we suffer through the dark winter of Biden, Harris, Pelosi, and Schumer should be in there as life just falls apart all around us. Anyway, remember Market Watch around February 20th, which I think is Saturday. But keep an eye on the market. What's going to happen? We don't know, but a market watch indeed. Also, we did Monday's show on this important document, seculardems.org. Go there and read it, learn it as they work to ruin the country. And they are the guiding principle behind this regime. All right, we start, we'll do that tomorrow. We start with getting us in the mood for this town hall.
Come ride the little train that is rolling down the tracks to the junction. Forget about your cares, it is time to relax at the junction. Lots of curves, you bet, and even more when you get to the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
There's a little hotel called the Shady Rest at the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
It is run by Kate, come and be her guest at the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
And that's Uncle Joe, he's a moving kind of slow at the junction. Petticoat Junction.
Yes, Uncle Joe, he's a moving kind of slow at Milwaukee too. Yes, he is. So, anyway, is that not correct, sir? Were you moving a little slow? Yeah, no head nod there. Yeah, pretty much. All right. So we start off with the first question from Anderson Cooper. It is on reopening schools.
Your administration had set a goal to open the majority of schools in your first 100 days. You're now saying that means those schools may only be open for at least one day a week.
No, that's not true. That's what was reported. That's not true. It was a mistake in the communication. But what I'm talking about is I said opening the majority of schools in K through 8th grade, because they're the easiest to open, the most needed to be open in terms of the impact on children and families having to stay home.
So when do you think that would be K through 8, at least 5 days a week, if
I
possible?
think we'll be close to that at the end of the first 100 days. We'd have a significant percentage of them being able to be opened. My guess is they're going to probably be pushing to open all summer, to continue like it's a different semester.
Do you think that would be 5 days a week?
So, anyway, now, if you have been watching this show or the press conferences, you know they have been saying that what would work for them is the majority of schools, meaning 50% or above, open for at least one day a week of in-person learning with a teacher in the class and students in the class. So, now, does this upset Jen? No. You know why? Because Jen Psaki, the press secretary, you know why? Because the president doesn't decide things. The administration does, the people behind the scenes. So she doesn't even get mad because it doesn't even matter what he says. Listen to Jen today. Where are you, Jen? All right.
You said previously that the goal was to have the majority of K-8 schools open at least one day a week in the first 100 days. Last night, President Biden called that a mistake in communication to want them open 5 days a week. So can you clarify what is the administration's goal for reopening K-8 schools in the first 100 days?
Well, I'm not going to take it personally that you don't hang on every word that I say in here. I did say last Thursday that the president will not rest until every school is open 5 days a week. That is our goal. That is what we want to achieve. But we look forward to seeing and hearing the CDC guidelines to gain a better understanding of what steps that will entail or should entail. I also said I can assure any parent listening that his objective, his commitment is to ensure schools are open 5 days a week. So I think we've been consistent for the last several days, and certainly when I initially said 1 day a week, it was our floor, it was not our ceiling. But without a doubt, the president wants schools to open 5 days a week, wants students to be in the classroom, wants to do that safely. We now have some guidelines from the CDC with several mitigation steps. We'll have to work. We need funding to do that. That is a pivotal piece of it. Many school districts need funding. They don't have it.
Yes, but that's what the president wants, so that's what we're going to do, even though 1 day a week will work. Well, of course, that's what they want. I understand. I'm not saying they don't want 5 days a week. But for at least a couple of weeks here, we've been told 1 day a week would be enough, and that's because of teachers' unions. But, of course, the president did say he wanted teachers vaccinated. The vice president, who is now our chief foreign officer, because she's the one making all the calls to foreign leaders now. And after you hear the pretend president talk more and more throughout this little town hall meeting, you will be glad she is the one on the phone. Maybe, I don't know. Who trusts her? Anyway, we continue on as now we go to the question of the administration's rollout of an online website to help you schedule your COVID-19 vaccination.
Concerned about the rollout of this online, because it has been incredibly confusing for a lot of people, not just older people, it's younger people just trying to find a place to get a vaccine.
Yes, and I have, because look what we inherited. We inherited a circumstance here where, and now for the first, we did a lot in the first 2 weeks, in a circumstance where, number one, there weren't many vaccinators. You didn't know where you could go get a vaccine administered to you because there was no one to put it in your arm, number one. Number two, there was very little federal guidance as to say what to look for, how to find out where, in fact, you could go. You can go online, and every single state now has a slightly different mechanism by which they say who's qualified, where you can get the vaccines, and so on. So it's all about trying to more rationalize in detail so people, ordinary people like me, can understand. I mean that sincerely. I mean, my grandchildren can use that online, make me look like I'm in the 7th century. But all kidding aside, so this is a process, and it's going to take time. It took us think of what we didn't do, and you and I talked about this during the campaign. We didn't do from the time it hit the United States. You're going to inject something in your arm, it's going to go away. You're going to all be down by Easter. We wasted so much time.
Another question about
What? Oh, your website hadn't rolled out that good because obviously under Obama and Biden administrations, you people can't do websites. And it's confusing to people, not just old people. The question before, he talked about how elderly black people and brown people who are in rural and urban areas, and I think that covers pretty much everywhere, doesn't it? They can't go online and find where that drugstore is, or they can't, just all kinds of things. So Anderson Cooper says, well, it's not just the old people can't figure out this website. Young people can't. It's supposed to help people know where to go to get a vaccination. And what's he talking about? He doesn't know what he's talking about. We don't know what he's talking about. Oh, a shot in the arm makes it all go away, and gun by Easter. And I mean, yes, President Trump did want to reopen everything by Easter of 2020, but there were no vaccines then. No one knows what the pretend president was just talking about. No one. Anderson Cooper didn't know. His look on his face was like, oh my goodness. But maybe since he speaks Yiddish, it was oy vey. I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking. And again, the school question was the one that gets the best answer. The rest of this is just scary. Just scary. Now, minimum wage. Take it away, Pretender in Chief. Might start playing the Platters' old song, Oh Yes, I'm the Great Pretender.
In 2020, Randy's the co-owner of a woodworking company here in Milwaukee. Randy, welcome.
Good evening. You're proposing a $15 minimum wage. Given the lower cost of living, specifically in the Midwest, many business owners are concerned that this will put them out of business, forcing them to downsize or cut benefits. How can you instill confidence in small businesses that this will benefit the Midwest business growth?
Well, first of all, the South is not much different than the Midwest in that regard as well. But here's the thing. If you look back over the last 40 years, as minimum wages increased, people haven't, the end result of net employment hasn't changed. The vast majority of economists, and there's studies that show that by increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it could have an impact on a number of businesses, but it would be de minimis, et cetera. Here's the deal. It's about doing it gradually. We're at $7.25 an hour. No one should work 40 hours a week and live in poverty. No one should work 40 hours a week and live in poverty. But it's totally legitimate for small business owners to be concerned about how that changes. For example, if we gradually increased it, when we indexed it at 720, if we kept it indexed to inflation, people would be making $20 an hour right now. That's what it would be.
The Congressional Budget Office says that a $15 minimum wage would lift 900,000 people out of poverty, but would also cost 1.4 million people their jobs.
Yes, but there's also, if you read that whole thing about Pinocchios and all the rest, there are also equal number of studies say that wouldn't have that effect. And particularly as you do it in terms of how gradually you do it. So let's say you said you're going to increase the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour between now and the year 2025 to $12 an hour, to $13 an hour. You'd double someone's pay, and the impact on business would be absolutely diminished, and it would grow the GDP, and it would grow and would generate economic growth. But it's not illegitimate as a small business person to worry about whether or not increasing it at one fell swoop would have that impact. I do support a $15 minimum wage. I think there is equally as much, if not more, evidence to dictate that it would grow the economy and long run and medium run benefit small businesses as well as large businesses, and it would not have such a dilatory effect. But that's a debatable issue.
Yes, I'm sure that man is saying, huh? Now, if he believes in raising the minimum wage, fine. A lot of people do because they don't understand basic economics, so they think if you just raise money this much, everybody will be rich. You give everybody $1 million, oh, everybody be rich. No, because you gave everybody $1 million, the cost of a one-bedroom apartment, which is average around $600 in this country, would go up to $106,000, $16,000 a month, because to get people to work, you would have to pay them an enormous amount of money. It's called things keep pace. Inflation, which he talks about indexing, looks at Cooper. If we'd index that 7 to that, everybody'd be making 20. And nobody even knows what he's talking about right now. Or why. They know what he's saying. They don't know why. Because all the questioner wants to know is, You're going to bankrupt our businesses. Our cost of living isn't that high. Why do people need to make $15 an hour? There are places in the country where $15 an hour is very good pay. But see, it's not about that. It's about unions, but you know. Anyway, and of course at the end he says, but this is all very debatable. This is what I believe in, but it's debatable. It's not fact. It's not this. It's not anything. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just started talking and words came out. I don't know where I'm going with it. All I know is what? See, this is the guy in the Oval Office. If we're under nuclear attack, he makes the decisions. Yeah, you know, I remember when I was a boy and they were, you know, we have that duck and cover thing. You think that'd still work? I don't know. I hate to send off that, you know, those rockets. They're underground, a lot of them. You know, what is he talking about? That's how come he doesn't make decisions. You can't tell me this is the man making decisions. If it is, we're in trouble. We are in trouble. We need help, and help quickly. All right, so minimum wage. And now a business owner asking about money to help him through the pandemic.
From Milwaukee, co-owner of Black Husky Brewing. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. My partner and I own a small brewery in the River West neighborhood of Milwaukee, and we have 9 amazing employees. We rely primarily on selling our beer out of our tap room, and with the pandemic, our business has gone down about 50%. Now, we've relied primarily on loans, grants, as well as our own reserves to survive. However, the new assistance has been too slow, and recently it's gotten more restrictive on how we can apply it. What will you do so that small mom and pop businesses like ours will survive over large corporate entities?
Change it drastically. First of all, by making sure we have inspectors general. You may remember when the first bill passed, you may remember there was a guy running saying, what's going to happen is the banks aren't going to lend you the money. They're going to ask you a question. Do you have your credit with us? How many loans do you have with us? What credit cards do you have with us? Because even though they were being underwritten and we bailed their rear ends out last time out, it was too much trouble to lend to you. What did the president do? And I don't want to pick on I'm tired of talking about Donald Trump. Don't want to talk about him anymore. But the last administration spent a lot of time, talking about how there was no need for inspector generals. We find out that 40% of the money, the PPE loans to go to PPP loans to go to small businesses went to corporations that were multi-million-dollar corporations. You're going to see an investigation showing that a lot of this was fraudulent where it went. So what I'm doing is I provide $60 billion for you to be able to make capital investments in order to be able to open safely and make sure you're in a position that you can do the things that are recommended. You've noticed there's been very little federal directions for you all as to how to safely open your businesses. Yet, if you're able to test your employees, if you're able to be in a situation, if you serve people, you have plexiglass dividers, a whole range. If you're able to have everybody with a mask and the like, you can do so much to safely open, but you don't get that direction. So the money, I guarantee you, is going to go to small businesses with people, and I'm shooting. And by the way, the original definition of a small business is 500 or fewer employees. Well, that's not what I mean by small businesses. What we meant by small businesses, the mom and pop businesses hold communities together and keep people together. And particularly in neighborhoods where if you don't have a beauty shop, a barber shop, a hardware store, a grocery store, etc., the center of the community begins to disintegrate some. So what I'd like to do is, if you are willing to give me an address, lay out for you precisely, without taking more time, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm supposed to only talk 2 minutes and an answer, is to let you know exactly how that $60 billion as part of the recovery package will go to small businesses.
All right. We're going to take...
Yeah, I couldn't just do it then, could you, Joe? Well, first of all, if you were watching last week, you know that very important questioner is out of luck. because they're not giving money to white male-owned businesses. No, because white males have too often, they're just successful just because they're white. You know, that's just the way it is. But the guy's already open, Joe. He's already open. He doesn't need help and guidance in how to open. He needs help to stay open because the state won't open up. They won't let him open up, so he's not making it. 9 employees. They're just going to be out. Of course, you don't care about that because over 1,000 employees were out with a stroke of the pen with the Keystone Pipeline and many others. South Dakota it is just an empty shell right now. But that's okay, Joe, because we're going to raise that minimum wage, and that's debatable. But, you know, if it'd been up to, 7 up to inflation, it'd be 20, and we're going to have plexiglass. Yeah, we're going to have plexiglass. I mean, really, the man cannot just answer. Yes, Inspector Generals. The other guy didn't like Inspector Generals. I must have missed that. I must have missed that. The Paycheck Protection Program helped many, many, many businesses, and Congress wouldn't extend it. And there's a lot of businesses wouldn't be having any problem right now if they would have extended that out, but they wouldn't do it. Why? Because it was working. It was working. But again, the confused person in chief, what's your answer? If you're that man asking the question, what's your answer? What answer do you go away with? Oh, maybe there'll be something in that $60 billion, so I won't have to close my business, which is not my fault. I don't know. I don't think any of these answers would help me. Now, you know where else we're going. We've got to go talk about recovery. I mean, not recovery, but what happened at the Capitol, because you knew that was going to come up. So here it is. Concerned citizen number 1.
Joel, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Anderson. I'm not bad at the literature part, but after 5 years of French, I still can't speak a word, so I apologize.
I'll teach you some Yiddish sometime. How's that?
By the way, I understand a little bit of Yiddish.
I'm sure you do.
It would be a Shonda if he didn't, but...
More seriously, Mr. President, like millions of my fellow citizens, I was shaken by the attack on the Capitol on January 6th and on our democracy more broadly by your predecessor and his followers. While I appreciate efforts being made to bring them to justice, I worry about ongoing threats to our country from Americans who embrace white supremacy and conspiracies that align with it. What can your administration do to address this complex and wide-ranging problem?
It's complex, it's wide-ranging, and it's real. You may... I involved in politics to begin with because of civil rights and opposition to white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, and the most dangerous people in America continue to exist. That is the greatest threat to terror in America, domestic terror. And so I would make sure that my Justice Department and the Civil Rights Division is focused heavily on those very folks. And I would make sure that we, in fact, focus on how to deal with the rise of white supremacy. And you see what's happening, the studies that are beginning to be done, maybe at your university as well, about the impact of former military, former police officers on the growth of white supremacy in some of these groups. You may remember in one of my debates with the former president, I asked him to condemn the Proud Boys. He wouldn't do it. He said, stand by, stand ready, or whatever the phrase exactly was. It is a bane on our existence. It has always been, as Lincoln said, we have to appeal to our better angels. And these guys are not, and women are in fact demented. They are dangerous people.
Yes, demented, deranged, dangerous. Now, in the question before, it just stated that his Justice Department was independent because someone asked him about prosecuting President Trump for his role in things, just whatever. And he's like, no, the Justice Department doesn't belong to me. It's not mine. It belongs to the people. And now he's saying, I'm going to tell the Justice Department to focus on white supremacy. You know, ladies and gentlemen, as people have said, where are all these white supremacists? I don't understand how he keeps getting away with it. But Anderson Cooper should have said, no, sir, you got in for the wrong reason. The president was not a white supremacist. He has not supported white supremacy at all in any way, shape, or form. But no. And of course, he starts talking about all kinds of things. You know, he starts talking about what? Former police officers and military officers who get into it. So what's he doing? He's saying police officers are basically white supremacists. Military officers are. Of course, they have the stand down of the armed forces going on right now so they can find out who those white supremacists are. And if you watch Monday's show or if you read seculardems.org signature statement, which is guiding the Biden regime, then you know that it's not just white supremacists, but it's also white religious nationalists. Yeah, if you go to a right-wing church and you're white and you believe in our nation, well, you're a terrorist too. You need deprogramming, all of this. But, you know, again, what? Where's this guy going? What's he doing? Why are we listening? Oh, yeah, because he's the guy in charge. Or at least he's sitting in the chair. I don't know. Joe, are you with us, buddy? There's the head nod. Okay. I want to make sure. You're following us. I don't know if anybody else is. But you are. I mean, he just... What's he saying? All right, last one. Yay! He's going to be asked, how, this defunding police, but a lot of black people want police. All right? And this is the answer that just... I mean, really. I mean, can you imagine being with him at dinner and asking him how he likes the roast beef? I mean, really, just think of this. Everybody's going to be up and gone by the time he finishes. Well, roast beef, yeah, that comes from cows. And cows are very involved in global warming. And we probably need to look around the world at the cows. And but that gravy's pretty good. I like the gravy and potatoes. A lot of people think they only come from Idaho, but I'm Irish, and I know that potatoes come from the ground, and in lots of places, and particularly Ireland, but the roast beef, yeah, there's other cuts of meat on the cow as well, but I think I like the roast beef, but some people don't. It's debatable. And by the time everybody's had their dessert and they're gone, and they don't even know what he's talking about, and he's just there talking to the chair. I mean, there's no way Dr. Jill Biden can't just be tuning this man out most of the time.
That people were treated fairly. I'm sorry to go on. There's much more to talk about, but...
We actually have a related question over here. This is Danny Evans, a pastor in Janesville who works as a supervisor for the Juvenile Justice Diversion Program in Rock County. He's an independent, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. He's also a member of the state's 32-member Racial Disparity Task Force created in the wake of the Jacob Blake shooting last summer. Danny, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Defund the police is discussed as an option for reforming policing. However, there are communities where people live in fear, not of the police, but in fear of the violent gangs who commit crimes in those neighborhoods. How can we be sure that we don't over-legislate police officers so that they can't do their job to protect the law-abiding citizens who live in these high-crime neighborhoods, and yet train officers to police with compassion?
By number one, not defunding the police. We have to put more money in police work. So we have legitimate community policing, and we're in a situation where we change the legislation. No one should go to jail for a drug offense. No one should go to jail for the use of a drug. They should go to drug rehabilitation. Drug rehabilitation. number one. We should be in a position where we change the system of sentencing system to one that relates to a notion of, they should tell you that, is related to making sure that what you do is you focus on making sure that there's rehabilitation. The idea that we don't have people in prison systems learning how to be, spending the money, learning how to be mechanics, learning how to be cooks, learning how to have a profession when you get out. The idea that we deny someone who served their time access to Pell Grants, access to housing, access to, right now, as you well know, most places you get out of prison, you get $25 on a bus ticket. You end up back under the bridge exactly where you were before. And the fact is that the concern in many minority communities is black on black, Hispanic on Hispanic, not just, but here's the deal. There has to be much more serious, how can I say it, much more serious determination as to what the background and the attitudes of the recruit is, what their views are. There should be much more psychological testing, like you would if you go into the intelligence community. What is it? What are the things that make you respond the way you do? Because there is inherent prejudice built into the system as well. And we also need to provide for, and it's happening, more African American and more Hispanic police officers. Now, by the way, they don't get it all right either, by a long shot. But every cop, when they get up in the morning and put on that shield, has a right to expect to be able to go home to their family that night. Conversely, every kid walking across the street wearing a hoodie is not a member of a gang and is about to knock somebody off. So it's about education. I'd love to talk to you more about it because it is the answer, in my view, that and education, actually access to education. And one of the things that I talk a lot about, and I'm sorry to go on about this, but it's important, I don't think we can look at our opportunity in the, let's stick with the African American community for a minute, in terms of the criminal justice system. That is only one small piece of why people are the way they are. You realize, I don't know what home you live in, but if you go ahead and you want to get insurance and you're in a black neighborhood, you're going to pay more for the same insurance I'm going to pay for the exact same home. Your car, you've never had an accident in your car. You live in a black neighborhood, you're going to pay a higher premium in your car. So there's so many things that are built in institutionally that disadvantage African Americans and Latinos that we fact, I think, and one of the great advantages, I'm sorry, but one of the great advantages, as bad as things are, I keep reading from presidential historians how I've inherited the worst situation since Lincoln, worse than Roosevelt, because economic crisis, political crisis, racial crisis, etc. But the fact is that everyone's gotten a close-up look now and seen what's happened. That kid holding that camera for 8 minutes and 46 seconds awakened the whole world. When I met with his little daughter after he was dead, she said, "My daddy's changed the world." Guess what? Not only here in the United States, around the world, people said, "Whoa, I didn't know that happened." Dr. King, when my generation, when I got involved in the civil rights movement as a high school student in the early 60s, and you had Bull Connor and his dogs in the late 50s singing on those ladies going to, in their black dresses going to church and little kids and fire hoses ripping their skin off. He said what happened there was it was a second emancipation because people in places where there weren't black communities said, "That really happens? I didn't believe it." They saw it happen. And so it generated the Voting Rights Act, it generated the Civil Rights Act, and he called it the second emancipation. We have a chance now to make significant change in racial disparities. And I'm going to say something's going to get me in trouble, which I couldn't go through a whole show without doing that. And that is that, think about it. If you want to know where the American public is, look at the money being spent on advertising. Did you ever 5 years ago think every second or third ad out of 5 or 6 you'd turn on would be biracial couples? No, I'm not being facetious. The reason I'm so hopeful is this new generation. They're not like us. They're thinking differently. They're more open. And we got to take advantage of it.
I want you to...
Now, again, what? What does any of that have to do with how do we tackle the police issue in keeping people safe and making sure police don't do wrong things? I mean, what? Because on commercials, they're showing biracial couples? That's what gives him confidence? The answer to keeping people safe in their homes in black and brown communities is we don't arrest anyone because they take drugs. They go to rehab. But then you got to have people accessing, they belong in prison. So why? They can learn a trade. They can learn to be a mechanic. And then when they get out, they you know, Pell Grants, et cetera, they serve their time. Okay, maybe so, maybe not. But this is how his mind works. There are people in neighborhoods, sir, they don't want the police defunded, and they're black. They're brown, and they're afraid. Well, we won't defund them, but we're going to do this and that. And we're not going to arrest people for being on drugs. They don't... What? And I got into politics because of racial issues. He just wants an answer for people that want protection. And there's black women going to church in black dresses and little kids getting their skin ripped off. And what? And again, okay, maybe he's making some great points. But the point is, what if all of a sudden he has to make a real decision? And he's going to sit there and do what? No wonder the conversation lasted 2 hours with the Chinese president. You know, Mr. Xi, I was, you know, those chopsticks of yours, I get, you know, sometimes I can do them, sometimes I can't. How come you call them chopsticks, you know? Because if you chop them, they'll break in half. I don't know. I mean, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, we have an answer tomorrow concerning China from Jen Psaki about the Biden, you know, regime's plan on China. But this is what they're doing. Then he went on. The guy doesn't even remember what his question was now. It's like a show one time my wife and I were watching, and, you know, the interviewer asked the interviewee a question that should have taken, you know, at the most a minute. He spent like, what was 20 minutes answering the question. And at the end of it, he asked the interviewer, does that answer your question? And the interviewer had a halting way of speaking, said, I don't even know what the question was. And no, the interviewee never answered the question. He just went off on a theory. He never answered the question. And again, politicians do that, but this is not avoiding the question. This is, oh, you know, hey, it's good. They're okay in their homes. They have biracial couples on television now. Yeah, we're doing good. Yeah, we're not, you know, black women, they're okay if they go to church now in black dresses. They won't get attacked by dogs. It worries me. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe he's just got a higher way of thinking. You know, it makes you glad that there are people handling him for his short time in office. It makes you glad that now Vice President Harris is calling foreign leaders, except she's expressing her policies. Now you understand how come Jen Psaki always says, well, the administration and the president think this or are in agreement on this. Why wouldn't the administration be in agreement with the president? He's over it. It's because the man can't think. I don't say that unkind. I mean, there it is. None of those questions were hard. None of it's hard. The man's in trouble. I've told you, he's having some problems. I mean, Biden has always been one who could kind of ramble, but this puts rambling to shame. I mean, what? Well, people don't need to be arrested for doing drugs, but then they need to go to prison so they can learn to be a mechanic? It's not let's talk about opportunity. It's not just the criminal justice system is giving opportunity in the black neighborhood. Let's talk about insurance. You've got people wanting to know how they're going to be protected. Let's talk about insurance. Yeah. Well, it's what we've got till it's gone, and that's why we're here chronicling this horrible, disastrous regime. Pray for our nation. Pray for that man. God bless America. Pray for one another. Pray for a swift end. Because it's not getting any better than what it is now. It's only going to get worse. So God help us, because I don't think anyone else can. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow here on what I assume is your favorite show, Countdown to Restoration. Bye. Have a nice evening.